Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service, here to present a chart of Texas. In light of what Texas is doing, not just to women, but to minorities with their voting laws and to lack of protection for those of us that are not really gun people, okay? I don't live in Texas. I have to admit this. I have never been to Texas. I've had opportunity. I've turned it down. I don't know why. I've always had an aversion to Texas, but I have to admit that I always have. I'm not sure. Maybe I had a past life there. I'm not sure. But I can tell you that I have never liked their politics. I never liked the way they do things there. And as a result, I've been very, very biased about that state and not wanting to spend even a dime of my money there. Okay. So I want to come out and be clean with you. It's not my favorite state. I've been to some beautiful states, but I have not been there. Now, what we're going to, let me do this. Let's get this out of the way. First of all, thank you for watching this video. Thank you to all of my subscribers. And if you're not a subscriber, I hope you'll consider becoming one. And if you would like, share, comment, I'd love to hear from you. But most of all, thank you guys for helping me build this channel. It's a slow process, but it is coming along, and I really appreciate all of the support I get from you. Now, just to explain what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at the chart, the basic chart with the Janus program, as I always do. Then we're going to look at that chart with asteroids. Now, please bear in mind, I do not have an official date when they signed that paper. So what I used was 12 noon, which puts the sun automatically at the midheaven. So though I am going to talk a little bit about the angles, particularly in the progress chart, because you can, I do want to point out that I am working with asteroids and transits even over the angles once again, though I do have to admit that when you put the sun at the midheaven, a lot of stuff will jump out that's also very, very accurate. And I think it'll be a great lesson for those of you who do study astrology. Before I get into the charts, I want to state this. This is my second go around on this tape already because I feel like I forgot some things. And with that said, those of you out there who are astrologers who may be familiar with the chart of Texas or know even more than I do about what I'm looking at, I would love to hear from you. If we need to do a part 2 on this, I'm real cool with that. I really want to get some of this information out there because I have always had an aversion to Texas and I'm never sure why. Although when I looked at the chart, I did get some inclination as to why. And the other reason is because I think that Texas has thrown a real monkey wrench into what's going on around us today. And we're going to look at why they're doing that because there is a reason why. We're also going to look at whether or not they'll be ultimately successful, which I don't believe they will be. But in the interim, we do have to live with it till we can fix it. And that is what we're going to be discussing a little bit today. So with that said, I'm going to go right to the charts. Hopefully I don't forget everything or anything the way I did when I went through the last video. So hold on and cross our fingers. Here we go. Okay, so here we are with Janus. And the first thing that I'd like to talk about is look at this chart. Holy crap, okay? So you have a chart that has everything, literally, from the midheaven, because everything here is close to the midheaven, all the way down to the second house. Now, interestingly enough, if I didn't use trans-Neptunians, which a lot of astrologers don't, there would be nothing in the second house. But I want to leave Zeus there because it's a part of my little speech. Okay. So the couple of things that, and that's me setting it up with the sun at the midheaven. Okay. So there's no spread on this chart, and there wouldn't be regardless of whether I had a really, really good time or not. Should have checked with a historian, but noon is used a lot. So I think we're going to get a lot of information just using noon. A couple of things I want to point out right away. First of all, let's talk about why I use Zeus, okay? If you notice that Zeus, which is in Gemini at 0 degrees, is in the second house, it really does spark the interest in earning money, the drive, if you will, to earn money. So Texas, when it's established, December 29th, 1845, there is this drive for economics. Okay. Now, the other thing, besides the seeds and, really just being excited about how we can set this up, realize that Texas makes its money from oil. So we've got a Venus ruler. See, it's Taurus, ruled by Venus. We go to Venus and it's conjunct Neptune. Well, Neptune is also seen as oil. So here we have a chart that's telling us that this state makes money from oil. Okay? They do. But we all know that the oil industry is fading. All right. Oh, I know I shouldn't say that out loud, but it is. Okay. We know that it's not good for the earth, and people, it's just not in as much demand. Okay. So keep that in mind with everything else that's going on. I do. Yeah. Before I jump, this Zeus. Okay. So what did they do besides suppress women and suppress minorities? They gave everybody and their uncle and the monkeys guns. No permits necessary. You can be a whack job, but you'll get one. And you can open carry. Okay. Do they think they're going to make money on that? Do they think that that's going to improve their economy? I'm not sure, but it is kind of suspect, isn't it? I'm a little suspicious. All right. I don't like working with houses so much, but yet if you put the sun at the midheaven and you look at this chart of when they were formed and how important Zeus is here in the second, you see that? Okay. When Texas came into being, it was a turning point for the other. When the Europeans, the white Europeans, took over this predominantly Hispanic Indian place, okay, it was a turning point. Okay, so, and I don't think anyone will deny that. Okay, I also want to point out a couple of things. Look at the nodes. They're the Aries point. Okay. And it's really, really interesting because I see Texas authorities, and we'll talk about that in a sec, okay, as trying to hold on to the past. Those authorities that are in there right now. But for Texas, their way out is always going to be the future. It's going to be the people that are progressively moving toward the future, not the past, South Node. The other thing I want to point out about this, North Node is in Scorpio. Transformation, it's also a lot of other things besides transformation, but it's really about the dynamics of hidden motives, inner workings. It has a lot to do with death, taxes, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I should go there. But anyway, it's an 8th house thing. Look what the South Node is. Money. I'm just going to say it like that. What's holding Texas back? Money. Okay. So there's some issues here between making money and transforming and becoming. And they don't want to transform and become because it to them, it would be leaving the patterns of money behind. However, the new age is not going to be about money either, which we'll be finding out in not so long down the road. So really interesting, very accurate there. There's more. Oh, there's so much more. So we got that, okay? I'm going to move on to this, all right? So we have a sun. Let me get my pen. We have a sun. We have a moon. And in the middle, we have hate. Okay, so first of all, let me talk about the fact that the sun and the moon appear to be conjunct. They're not. They are on certain months, maybe certain solar returns. They would be on the same angle, and then they would be in relationship to one another. But I'm going to be really honest with you. They have a midpoint of Hades, and that really speaks to a lot of things. Well, first of all, it could be that there are men and women who are strongly interested in the history that has gone on in Texas. They have a rich, rich, rich history, particularly with the Spanish, the Mexicans, and the Indians. Okay. Notice that they're all brown people. And, it could be that because of that history. Okay. The other thing is remember that they were the Lone Star State. They had to be they were alone. They were going to do their own thing. And right now I'm sort of sorry they didn't, but we won't get into that. But they're going to be Chiron. They don't have to follow the rules. And you're going to find out that there's an element of Chiron even in the progressed chart. So you've got these people or this situation where they don't think they have to follow the rules. They're special. Okay. All right. Now, hate, however, though, stands for a whole lot more than the past. It stands for Indigenous populations, which both the Hispanic people and the Indians are when it comes to Texas. Okay. And it really is, how do I say this? It really is an issue in Texas, racism. Okay. It's so interesting. You're not allowed to say the word, but yet it's in their chart. They're racist. Okay. That's the way they were set up. When they set this state up, they had an issue with prejudice. Okay. And I'm going to say, because I forgot to say this in the last video and I want to say it now, there is an asteroid that shows up at the IC, the root, that literally is Hopi. Prejudiced. The base of Texas, there's a lot of prejudice. Okay. I get very angry about the prejudice, particularly in those southern states, because they are too white to be natives of the area. And yet they can't respect that. And so it's just wholly upsetting to me. I mean, that anybody should feel that way toward any minority, but that in certain states, it's more prevalent than others. And Texas is one of those states. Okay. So when they do things, I do think that they really are trying to suppress the minorities. But they're not minorities much longer, thank God. We're homogenizing, which I always knew was going to happen. I kept thinking as a kid, man, will this happen quick? Or let's keep moving it here, people. Okay, because the way people treat each other is horrendous. Okay, and that's what Hades is saying. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that. I also talk about it because up there with the Hades is women. The people in general, because that's where the minority situation is. But I think there's something about women that, it's funny. I heard an Afghan woman say that the Taliban is not afraid of any big Western country, but they're afraid of women. And I do know for a fact that women were instrumental in settling the West. They were not little wives on the prairie like they're trying to tell us when we were growing up. No, they weren't. They helped settle this land as much as any man did. But for some reason, there is, in this country, not just Texas, there's a fear of women. And I don't quite get it, but it's strong in some areas. And I hear it. And it's interesting to me because the rise of the feminine is coming. So you better get over your fears, people, and just, women do a good job. Let them do their jobs, right? I don't know why the need to suppress women. I don't know why the need to suppress minorities, because when people flourish, we all flourish. So unfortunately, I guess some people are not that evolved to understand that. So here's the other thing I wanted to talk about. Okay, I'm making sure I didn't miss anything because that's what happened in the last video. Here we have Mars Uranus in a conjunction. Now they're at the ascendant here, and I do want to point out that Texas does like to unsettle everybody, upset the apple cart. Yeah, so I'm wondering how much that Uranus does affect that ascendant, since that's exactly what they've done just now. We'll see that in that progressed chart. But I think Texas likes to do that. I think that's one of my issues with Texas. I don't like that. I don't like big mouth, big hats, big, big, big. That's selfish. Okay. So there's this whole thing about our freedoms, our rights, never thinking that, what about the rights of your neighbors? Okay. So don't get me started. That's a whole other issue. But I like the fact that they both showed up in the 12th house here with Kronos. Now, Kronos is not an aspect to them. Kronos is just there, okay? But it does mean that the authorities work behind the backs. And Mars, Uranus, they make changes behind everybody's back. They just did it, okay? So I'm not so sure this chart is very off, okay? Because they're doing it. They just did it. Okay. That whole Mars, Uranus work behind the scenes so that we can do what we want. And, the rest just have to live with it. And then the whole world is shook up and they cause a lot of chaos. They bring about turning points, and it's all in their chart. Okay. The other thing I want to point out, again, I don't want to forget anything, is this. Okay. Well, there's actually a couple things I still need to point out. Jupiter and Zeus are in both in 0 degrees, and they're forming what's called discomfort. It's an inconjunct. There's a little discomfort. So they're expanding guns. This is 1845, but they're doing it. What, 170 years later? They're doing it. Or 160 years later. It's a long time. That is so interesting, because they also kind of tend to think that maybe this is going to help them, maybe economically. I don't understand it, but I'm not a Texan, so I don't get it. But I can tell you that they are expanding guns, and I'm not so sure that's going to go well. So that'll be really interesting to see how that goes, because those two placements, are easy for them to do right now, but I don't think that that's going to stay, and we'll get to why that is. So the last thing I want to talk about is, Pluto has been, we're going through Pluto return as a country, and eventually I'll do a big shindig on that. Okay. A big chart thing, because that's a really huge factor. Okay. And when we do that big hurrah, and I want to get closer to the actual first hit to really, but we're going through it now, and I know I've talked about that much before, but look how much they've got hit with Pluto. Okay. So let me get this off. So I'm going to go into a whole Pluto thing right now. All right. So Pluto is at 2257, making it about 23 degrees. All right. Well, Pluto for us right now is wavering 24, 25. So Texas is going through something, and has been going through something interesting, since they had problems with the grid, their electrical grid. They got a lot that they're going to have to answer for. And again, it goes back to how those people in positions of authority have worked behind the scenes. And I'm going to say in a sneaky way. Okay. They've been very sneaky with Mars and Uranus there with, okay. And Pluto is on this chart just below the horizon, or it's one of the first planets and in there. But again, I don't know how accurate this time is. So what I'm going to say is Pluto, our Pluto, is really affecting this chart. Okay. And we see it affecting it because even right here, there's so much pressure. And by the way, that's not going away, because the Pluto return for our country is like 27 degrees. This volcano, this pressure, we have to do this. We have to do this. Why? Because they're losing ground. Okay. As we become more homogenized as a society, how are we going to deal with prejudice? How are we going to deal with submissions of people? I don't think we are going to deal with it. We're going into a humanitarian age. It just doesn't sit well. So we are going to be dealing with that volcanus. And that volcanus is going to upset everything, okay? And all the way down to 29 degrees. So they are going to be dealing with Pluto till Pluto finally leaves the sign of Capricorn and heads into Aquarius, which is about 5 years from now. So Texas is going to go through an awful lot in the next 5 years. And I want you to listen to that. And they feel like they're trying to hold on to their past. And I explained that to you. It's all about the money. But since oil is drying up, and here you go. The other thing I didn't mention with the oil, see what I mean, is the fact that, look at this. Adamitas is saying that they haven't diversified how they make money down there. And Saturn is telling you that they're restricted. Okay, so there's a lot of restriction where it's all about oil. So they haven't looked into other ways in which they, as a state, could make money. They've been so tied to oil. This is really going to go against them in the next 5 years. Okay, so they feel they had to implement these laws because they're losing ground. They really are losing ground. Okay? Now, I'm going to pull up another chart just so that we can briefly look at the asteroids. And here, which chart? This is the secondary progressed. Let me not jump ahead, okay? Yep, here we go. Okay, so here's the same chart we've been looking at, all right? And you notice there's really nothing at this ascendant right now in terms of asteroids. We do have our Uranus, our Mars, okay? We do have Pluto, but isn't it interesting? Again, not using these angles. But look over here. These are the other, like, okay, this is the ascendant, and then this is the interaction with the people and for the state. And that's where people feel like they're being held captive or against their will. I think that happened in 1845. I think that the Spanish people were misplaced, if for a better word, okay? I think that there was a lot of chaos. I think it was a turning point. And this is, again, Texas thinking they can be the Lone Star State. And there's a lot of bonding. Okay. And then look at this. Here we go again. So as they go into the state, this is like maybe they were alone, then they're in the state, and they've talked about leaving the state. So they go back and forth. So that, here we go again, that still applies. Okay. So all the way down here, there's a lot of karma on this. There's a lot of that's faded on this situation. And Asteria tells you that at the time, I know it was the Spanish and the Catholics, but they've always been somewhat religious. Okay? And I think that's also true. So if we come up here and we see, here we are with that Hades again, Mercury's up there. So we, again, the news or what's going on in Texas at all times, they're putting out there what they want us to hear. You know, Mercury's up there at the ascendant, the midheaven, I'm sorry, not far from that sun. And you get things like Letitia's. And so there's a lot of change of direction that happens. And I like this. Ophelia. There's also a lot of exaggeration. That's another issue that I have with Texas. Everything has to be exaggerated, overdone, overwhelming, over everything. So, you know, that Ophelia is, you know, it's everything that happens in Texas is going to happen with an extreme, quote unquote, about it. Okay. So in this chart, it's very accurate what we already know about Texas. We also know that it's big and it incorporates a lot of different people. There's a lot of expanse within it. But I also want to point out that surprises come through those expansions. So that's in the chart. Now, this is all going to shift. All of these things will sort of still be in this chart and they'll still be important because a secondary progressed chart is a chart where you age everything. Okay, so it's not the same as a solar return. I might consider doing that at another time because they made all these changes. But for now, I just want to look at this as a secondary progressed and a birth chart. And this is the birth. Okay. Here's another expanse quality. Cupido to Jupiter, everything's bigger in Texas. So, you go through this and you get, it's pretty interesting how this is absolutely how it looks. Okay. So I thought that when I looked at this chart, it was extremely telling about Texas and what we know of Texas. Okay. So even without that, but a couple things I want to look at, even with regards to this Aries point chart, there is Bacchus is down here at the Aries point with uh, suicidal tendencies or tendencies to do things that are not good for us. Okay. So I don't know, never been to Texas, don't know what it is there, but I would suggest that there's probably a lot of alcohol in Texas. Okay. Then it goes on, and there was something else that was really interesting here. I think it was in here with, would be in here. And again, it thinks it's special and there's a beginning. So there's a lot in the chart about how Texas deals with beginnings. And I am using the Aries point because it's such an Aries point chart. Look at this. Okay, so here we have the Aries point, but look, right outside, there's Mars, there's Uranus, there's another ascendant. So they're not so far outside of. If I go to where they're located, approximately 7 degrees, okay? So I'm going to come into 7 degrees. All right, so I come into 7 degrees, and you can see, here we go, Uranus midheaven. So again, we go with the shock, the changes, everything that's sort of how it's done. But I can also tell you that it leads to a lot of sadness. A lot of sadness. The sun itself equals sadness. And I think that even by establishing themselves when they did and how they did, I believe there was a lot of sadness. Again, maybe I'm chromatically connected in a way that's why I find it very hard to even step foot in that state. I don't know why I feel that way. So I think this is to do the work on Texas is so interesting. Now, the sun is at 7 degrees, so that means that this Cupido at 9 degrees is also a part of that sun axis. And it equals things like pride and um, uh, advice that people don't really listen. There's a tendency not to listen. And the other thing is that it just feels like there's a lot of intuition there, and that people, if they listened, but I really don't pick that up. I do feel like there is a cliquish quality to their behavior, and that goes back to that whole prejudice thing, that whole Hopi. So I just want to point this out. Now I'm going to go and pull up the progressed chart. Here it is. And this should be the right one. Yes. Okay. So I pull it up. It's already there. And it's for now. And you can see that the sun and the moon right at the Aries point. I love this. The wheel. Everything is Aries point. Everything. Well, let's be honest. What they just pulled with the changing of those laws, definitely affected the world. The world stood up and took notice. And so it's something that has definitely impacted everybody in the world. And it's in the chart everywhere. The sun now has progressed to 1 degree of Cancer. The moon, which moves differently, has progressed to 28 degrees of Gemini. Ironically, now the sun and the moon straddle the midpoint. The midheaven, which is the midpoint. So it's almost like the relationship between men and women, or between those that run the country and run the state, and the state itself, the masses, are going to be uh, what they're kind of dealing with, how they're going to approach the future and how they want to be seen. Um, the issues that we have here, okay, and again, it talks about ending something related to health, which is huge. It also refers to bullies and being bullying and bullying the health fields. Toro is conjunct Hypatia. Okay. That's like bullying. All right. And that is exactly what's happening. And it's really causing an Eros. People are excited. And I'm not going to go with in a good way, especially with Valentine's down here. It's the only thing that really is on this, I see in this particular progress chart. And I'll get to, there's more, but I'll get to that. But I wanted to point this out. Remember all that stuff that was over at the descendant when they formed? It's now come to the ascendant. It's like what comes around goes around. Oh, okay. So we've got Chiron in the Aries point now. Okay. And Chiron is, here we go again with uh, turning points, the wounded healer. Some people think they're special, don't have to follow the laws. And so, but I do want to point this out. Okay. So this is where I start giving you a little bit of good news. All right. Because you're all thinking, when is she going to give me good news? Okay. First of all, I want to point out all of this, all of that is to hear. This is all part of that ascendant. So enabling people enabling to cause pain to other people. I just talked about pain level being at the ascendant of the chart when I talked about the birth chart. It's still there, okay? Enabling. These people there's an enabling of the ability to, it also is the addiction thing, because it's, no, actually it is Hebe this time. This time it is Hebe. I got to take this off so I can see it. Yeah, it is Hebe. That there's a cap on it. So that means like codependencies and just, enabling people. So there's this enabling, and it's causing a lot of pain, and people are bonding. They're praying, they're bonding, and then help comes at the 11th hour. And there are turning points. It does talk about how it's creating chaos, and how it's a hunter-prey thing. So it's almost as though they have uh, literally declared war against particularly those people who are seeking abortions. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But the charts don't lie. And that is what they're talking about. And by the way, all that stuff that I'm talking about, it squares the sun. It's not in good aspect to the sun. There's a definite square going on there, which means there's going to be a lot of discomfort. A lot of energy is going to be placed there. And things will be changed. So yes, they're changed now. But I think that with Circe, which is this, I think that they will be, again, there will be something that will be helpful. I also feel like the worst case scenario is that this is something that will galvanize the voters to get out and vote and get rid of these people that are in office there, and maybe try to start a different kind of a government. And I'm going to be honest with you. Remember, we did see a Latissius, and that's the change of direction asteroid, and it's in right now, actually. I'm just looking for it. I have all these notes. This is how I end up forgetting stuff, too. Here we go. Okay. This is what I'm doing. Okay, so in the progress chart, let me see if I can find it. We have a body image or physical stuff that is dependent on others, and it equals, and I think what I'm doing is I'm looking at the dial. So let's go to the dial. Yeah, I got to make sure that I actually go through everything, or this, I'll have to do it again. Okay, this is where it is. All right. So here we are. This is a progress chart, guys. Okay, so this is where some of the good news is. Right here, Nike Panacea, solving some problems for the sun and the moon, the connections of the people. There is a Jupiter Mars on it, and an ending, and the Chiron. So the turning point marks the beginning of an ending, not of abortions, although it might be temporary, but I don't feel like it'll go on. The other thing is that the just rewards at the beginning. So in other words, there will be justice as this begins. So in other words, it really is the final hour when things could finally be fixed up. Right there it is. This is Aries point right there. Okay, that's Aries point. This is telling us that this is what I was talking about. The body, dependencies, which is true because this is a health matter, physical dependency, beginning of justice. And this tells us just do it, solve the problem, Panacea. Okay? I had to bring that up. That's one of the things I missed in the last video. So I really wanted to talk about that. The other thing is that I feel like this is something that we're working to end this law. And ultimately, I think that will happen because, and let me see if I can find it. Latissius shows up here, and Latissius is changing directions. In other words, it's changing the government. So you go from this, stronghold of politicians, Republicans, and I think that this is telling us that this can change. Now I can't find where I was looking. I got more notes. I got more. Okay. I do believe this is going to lead to a change in government. I really, really do. Then you got a Pluto that equals the beginning. Okay. So Pluto is right in here. Okay. And it goes right to speaking out, Hestia, and there it is, the authorities. Okay. So one of the reasons why this is, okay, there's Latissius. It's close to Neptune. Okay. Okay. Well, it's coming back to me. Not far from the original sun, not this sun, the original sun equals Latissius. So if I go back to, and this is just something about Texas, by the way. If I go back, it would be, there's the sun, and I think it might be this chart that showed me that. But there is a Latissius on this. Now I can't find where it was. This is the problem with doing so much. Let me check it out here. Oh, now you're learning how to use solar fire, right? Let's see if it's even listed. No, it's not. Some of these were added in later, and therefore they're not in here. And it is one of them. Unfortunately, they only have the original 45. So in any event, my feeling is that it's all about changing the government, as I showed you, even in the progress chart, that what this will lead to, let me go back to it, is ultimately it could lead to a changing of the government, which is right here. All right. That is a progression to fixed. There it is. Oh, there it is. There it is. That's what I was looking at. Letitia's is conjuncting Saturn in the fifth, and it's an overreaction. And the overreaction, which causes sadness, has a midpoint. This is where I am, right here, that will change the direction of this state. Yes, there it is. And there's Saturn. Whew, took me a minute. You know, it's on my notes, but I never know what I'm looking at. Okay. Saturn, conjunct Saturn. It's, there's a Saturn here. It's 0 degrees of Pisces, whereas the original is actually, and we're going to go back because this is where it gets very confusing if you're an astrologer. This is the birth. Okay. And we go back, and Saturn was actually, I was up here. Oh, here we go. Colleen needs to write down where things are because it's very difficult once you get out to go back in and find them. Here we go. Saturn is, this is how you have to do it sometimes. Aquarius, that's what I thought. Why did I not see it? Which means it's up here. There it is. Okay. So here we have Aquarius at 16 degrees, Pallas at 17 degrees. Okay. Now, what happens is when they progress, and we do see how it was up there, it was in the 11th house. Here, it's actually in the 5th house, I believe. Yeah, it's in the 5th house of expression, which is the opposing. Let me make sure I got this right because, yeah, see the 11th? Right in there, right in there. Okay, it's in the 11th house, the house of groups, associations, even goals. Okay, so we had, because remember it was part of what was limiting them with regards to their ability to make money. All right, so this is all about those guys. All right, so if I go back in, oops, this one, that one's not in the right place. This one, look at this. So we've got Saturn with Neptune. By the way, that just confirms that Texas has just begun something that is going to take them through the dark night of the soul. Like I said earlier, I think it was this video, they got about 5 years because of Pluto. And this tells you that it's really going to change them. Now it's retrograde. It will start internally inside of the people, but it will happen. And it's interesting how these things, and this, look at this, the asteroid of Mother. Okay. Then look at this. And literally right in here is where the original Saturn is. So they're trying to stymie, I'm going to say, expression. And I don't think it's going to be long-term successful. Okay. I think it's going to be successful for me because I'm a Democrat, but you know, I really do feel that this is definitely going to change the, this is what I was talking about. This is all over my notes and I had missed it in the last video. I can also tell you that, as I said, the moon in this chart is getting ready to cross that ascendant. I mean, at midheaven. When it does, there is a saying that gives instant recognition. In this case, it will be to the people and to the women most particularly. So hang in there, girls. Hang in there, okay? You know, it's just so interesting where the world is right now. The Taliban's taking away rights of women in Afghanistan, and Texas is taking women's rights away here in the United States. So is there really a huge difference between what we consider a large economical country such as the United States versus a smaller, almost, I don't want to say third world, but perhaps in Afghanistan with no money, no economy? Then you look at a place like Texas, which has this booming economy. They're both taking the rights away from women. They're both afraid of women. I think it's really important to note what is truly going on here. There is a fear. Okay, this is where I'm going to get into my asteroid list. Hopi is on the IC of this progressed chart. This is the one I'm going to really finish up on. That is prejudiced. Now remember, Texas is prejudiced. Sun and moon, Hades down the middle, okay? Then you get Hopi on this IC with Apollon, okay, with fairness, with excitability that's coming out through Poseidon, the news, propaganda. But I am going to tell you that though I know lie is on the ascendant right now, they are lying through their teeth. They are lying. Okay. I know that this was a plan put in motion, just as most people do who are astute with politics, for a very long time. This is the Republicans feeling that they're losing grip because women are becoming a bigger voice in everything. And I believe they're afraid of that. And we are homogenizing our population. So there is going to be no such thing as the white majority in time to come. Okay? As a matter of fact, I think that's already dying. I always thought by 2025 that we would be a minority. And I'm cool with that. I've been waiting my whole life for this. So I don't have an issue with that. But I do believe that with makeover at the ascendant, Henderson with makeover, that and Elijah, which is a little bit self-destructive, I think these lives will be destructive to because they're trying to avoid the makeover. They don't want to. They want to put the horses back in the barn, which we all know can't happen. It just won't. You can try. But Varda is there. Though it's retrograde, Rosetta shows up. So we got Varda on this angle. We got Rosetta on this angle. These are truths. These are aha truths. Truths that can even set us free. So I believe we're going to get those. Okay. I believe we're going to find out that this whole thing is a vehicle to bully people. You've got Stockholm here, okay? You've got Bano here. This is about beating the people down. They're not governing these people. They are doing an autocrat thing. They are suppressing the people. Stockholm, Bano, I mean, you're really looking at, they're really trying to oppress and beat down. And Bano is, the relationships, okay? And that's why I know there's men that are on our side as well as men on the other side. So I don't blame this on the men at all. This is the axis down here, okay, that I actually saw Letitia's in my notes. I'm not seeing it on the chart, but I'm not seeing it anywhere, so that means nothing. But it does look like Letitia's is in there. So we have, oh, there it is. It's Aquarius. There it is. And it was all part of something else. I actually put that, though, as part of the sun axis. So that's what it is. It's where the sun was equals where Letitia's is today. So it's almost as though their way of thinking, the old way of thinking, equals that Letitia's, the change of direction. So I did want to point that out because that's really good news. Some of the other things I want to point out. Over here, okay, we have, let's make sure I got this. Okay, we do. We have people who are, there's necessary evils, okay, but it's crap. And there's no credibility to stop something. So we have to work in pieces. This is what they've done by going down to 6 weeks. And the messenger is going to bring anger. Mars is all over this. And it does relate to children, and to stomachs, which I thought was really interesting. And it this whole thing, okay, really, really points a lot of fingers at the anger that they're going to stir up because of their deciding to really try to press this with regards to um, women and babies. But I will say this. They think it's a necessary evil that people are getting mad, but they don't know about Letitia's, but you and I do. Okay. It also points out to how this is a vehicle, as I said, for them to put through their agenda. So it's a bigger than just the abortion issue, which is one of the reasons why I started the video off and talked about the other laws that they're also in the process of changing. The good news is that people are awake. There is karma from this, that there is a sense of here we go again, fighting for health. People will bond together. It is chaotic in the beginning because of people who think that, there's this whole thing about whether or not people think the rules apply to them. Hold on one moment as I'm back for real this time. I was hearing an alarm, but I was coming to the end of this and I figured that I would just go through the rest of it with you face to face, because there really isn't too much more to add. I want people to know, though, that there is help coming, that they will be able to change their government. And that's what this is really about. I think this is about galvanizing the people. The North Node in Scorpio is very telling with regards to the fact, well, first of all, the North Node is ruled by Pluto. And we know that Pluto is really changing things for us. And those transformations will be critical to what's going to happen in the next 5 years in Texas. I do not believe that these laws will stand for very long, because the worst case scenario is they get a new governor in 22, and I know they will. Okay. I mean, the charts do not lie. And I do know that sometimes we have to have these horrible things happen to get us to wake up. And that's what I see happening in Texas. There is awakening happening. And I don't think, no matter how many voter suppression laws they put into place, they will not keep people from voting. I don't care. And I don't believe that the government will come out Republican when it's all over. And I think that this is a change and a transformation that will take place over time. It may be a little rough between 23 and 24, but I really feel that they will find their way out already starting in late 22. I think that there might be some retaliation, but again, and that's because Zeus is wandering around the Aries point, Zeus guns, okay, explosions, excited populace. All of that is going to be hanging out with us for about 2 years. And I think that what they just did in Texas, waking people up, and then the way that there is such a, let's talk systemic racism. I bet you in the laws this is one of the areas where it's really, really bad, just by looking at the sun, moon equals Hades, and them not really wanting Indigenous or Spanish people to get ahead in the world. Hold on one moment. Sorry. I had to go out and check what was going on. There's alarms going off everywhere. It has nothing to do with me, but it was disruptive. So it's over. We're good. Anyway, I was at the end of my video. I do really believe that it will be okay, but it's really going to be bad only because it's what has to happen in order for things to change. And it's up to us to make those changes. So if you're a voter, get out and vote, and particularly in Texas, vote. So with that said, I'm going to leave you with take care. And until we meet again, as always, I wish you only happy readings. Thank you for watching.